Welcome into another live edition of Bully Ball on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. Steph Sanchez and I will break down Wild Card Weekend. The defensive coordinator search is heating up right now for the 49ers. Special teams coordinators, okay. And what is going on with this discussion about quarterbacks in the playoffs and Brock Purdy? Stick around right after this. I'm Jason Aponte. That is the great Steph Sanchez. Steph, are we having a hair off today? Because I have to say, your hair looks great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, yours looks great too, man. Did you just get a haircut?
I did on Saturday, actually. That's the pick me up I didn't know that I needed on January 14th. Is Steph complimenting my hair. So the rest of the day, it's all uphill from here. That's the saying, right? Speaking of all uphill, the 49ers defensive coordinator search continues. As we know, Nick Sorensen's not here, much to the delight of many people, but Robert Saleh's been mentioned. Jeff Ulbrich has been mentioned. And Dennis Allen was a little bit of not a curveball, but I think people were just forgetting about him being there. And I think it was Nick Wagner who said, make sure you keep an eye out for Dennis Allen. And I understand. I can hear it from the person that's listening to this audio-wise or watching this. I can hear it. Well, Jason, he was terrible as the head coach for the New Orleans Saints. And that's true. But head coach and defensive coordinator are two different things. And I remember the year was 2022. If I'm not mistaken, Jimmy Garoppolo still the quarterback. It wasn't Brock yet, or 2021. If I'm not mistaken. I remember Andy Dalton was the quarterback for them. And Kyle Shanahan talked about how it is so hard to game plan against Dennis Allen defenses. And that's kind of what I think 49er fans have been looking for is who's the guy that gives Kyle Shanahan fits? So now he can give other people fits, right? That's why the dream hire for me would be somebody like Jim Schwartz. Obviously, Cleveland's not going to let him go. Something like that, right? But what are your thoughts about Dennis Allen? Because I do think that the whole he was a bad head coach thing is overtaking the fact that he's a great defensive mind.
I also think him being a bad head coach makes him the perfect candidate.
Talk about it.
This is what I've been saying. This is what you need. Someone who's an elite defensive coordinator, but that no one would care to interview or offer a job for their head coaching position. That is perfect. You need a lifer. You need someone who's going to be able to stack multiple seasons for the 49ers as defensive coordinator. If you pair Kyle Shanahan with an elite defensive play caller who will also be able to offer you continuity year in and year out, he could build to the defense, add little wrinkles here and there every season. Now we're talking. Now we're cooking. That's definitely what you want. I can't speak too much as to Dennis Allen and what he brings defensively because I'll just say this: people smarter than me have said. I saw Rich say, for example, that he thought of the three, Robert Saleh, Jeff Ulbrich, and Dennis Allen, that he likes Dennis Allen the best of those three options. So I'm listening. I'm intrigued, right? My interest is piqued. And like I said, he also gives you, that continuity and that long-term option at defensive coordinator that I think this team desperately needs.
Yeah, and looking at the defense and the way that it's constructed right now, the name that comes up that really just gets me really upset is Gus Bradley. Let's bring in Gus Bradley because what the 49ers have been trying to do on defense is duplicate the 2012 Legion of Boom defense. And Gus Bradley was a part of that. But that's a step backwards. It's a 2012 defense, right? I think you bringing in Saleh, you bringing in Gus Bradley, sure, you'll get better play calling, but the scheme's not going to evolve. And I think I see a lot of people saying, I'd love for the scheme to evolve. But yet you can't tell me that you want this guy or this guy and you want the scheme to evolve because that's not going to happen. It's going to be the same thing that you've seen, just with a better play caller. Now, whether you think that's better than just, overall going through a scheme change, that's fine. But the idea of Saleh, Ulbrich, Gus Bradley, that's not going to change the scheme at all. If anything, you're going to be right back in wide 9 land and cover 3 land. All of that stuff is still going to be a constant. You're just going to have a better play caller. So I think it's kind of funny that people are like, oh, I can't wait for Saleh to come and overhaul it. No, he's not. No, he's not. He's going to come in and he's going to run the same exact thing. And so would Ulbrich, so would Bradley. So with Allen, I don't necessarily think that he would either evolve it. But I do think that going back to what I was saying about how Kyle Shanahan said, I hate preparing for Dennis Allen defenses. And I think Rob has all the numbers because he was defensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos. Funny enough, in 2011, their quarterback that year was Tim Tebow. I don't know how much that has to contribute to that because I know that defense is one thing, offense is the other. But if your offense is not sustaining drives or if they're getting your defense put on the field too long, you can get hung out to dry. But 20th in yards, 24th in points in 2011, 2016, 27th in yards. And this is for the New Orleans Saints. 27th in yards, 31st in points, 2016, not good. 2017, 17th in yards, 10th in points, getting better. 14th in yards and 14th in points in 2018. 2019, 11th in yards and 13th in points. 2020, 4th in yards allowed and 5th in points. And 2021, 7th in yards and 4th in points. Now, he takes over in 2022, and then the defense goes in the toilet because he can't just focus on defense anymore, right? He's got his hand in too many things, right? Like not too many cooks in the kitchen. He's the cook right now, right? Like, and he's trying to get the whole kitchen going. So that's why I think it's a little confusing when I see like, oh, well, Dennis Allen wasn't successful with the Saints. Yeah, as a head coach. But when he was on defense and he had all his guys, they were pretty good defense. And I think that the 49ers are talented still. They're looking to add in free agency and in the draft. So why not, right? Like, I think this is a move that a lot of people didn't think about because it was so preoccupied about Robert Saleh. I think any of these three would be great, but Dennis Allen would be fine, and it shouldn't cause too much concern.
Yeah, I agree. So these are some nice names so far. And so that's the thing, right? Like Dennis Allen, like if that's the 49ers plan C, that's already a hell of a lot better than your plan C of last season, which is why we've been saying like the 49ers kind of having the jump start to get these defensive coordinators in interviews in January rather than, late January, early February, whatever like they have in the past. That's going to help them a lot in this process. But they do also still have to continue to wait on a couple of other things, some other dominoes to fall. For example, Robert Saleh, who I still think Robert Saleh is probably their top choice. Like I just kind of imagining that. And he's getting some interest for head coaching, right? So Jags, he had his interview with the Jags today, and then Raiders, he's having later this week. So you kind of have to wait and see how those chips fall. Are any of those teams going to make him an offer? If they do, you have to imagine he is going to take a head coaching job over a defensive coordinator position. And I've seen a lot of people say, oh, well, the Jags are a train wreck. He'd be stupid to go there. Where a lot of coaches feel like they're the exception to the rule, and
I can fix them.
I can fix them. I can change them. Trent Baalke is nothing to me. And there is some buzz, according to Zach Blatt of The Athletic, saying that there's some buzz around Robert Saleh having a chance to secure the Jags head coaching job. So there's some mutual interest there. So just something that the 49ers are going to have to monitor. But it's good that they have other options available. And as of right now, those other options are still strong. Now, Jeff Ulbrich, who's the plan B, I think, he's getting interest, at least as the Jets head coach position. He was interim, after Saleh got let go. Do you feel like that's more of like legitimate interest, or is that kind of just, playing nice a little bit of a formality? Always interview the interim, right?
Right. And I think it's just a sign of respect. Like, interim, we want to give you a chance to and then the other thing is too, with these interviews is giving someone an interview for a premium position is almost like adding to their resume. Whether they get the job or not, they can still go to other places and say, listen, I interviewed 3-4 places, like I'm in demand. And sometimes some places are going to look people out and say, look, we'll interview you. We probably won't give you the job, but this will help you, if you're looking somewhere else. So you have to think of it in that way. And also, it's the Jets. I mean, Rex Ryan got an interview. Enough, please, enough. So again, the Jets are going to jet. But I do think that you're right about the whole idea with Saleh. And like, it does feel like if Saleh takes a defensive coordinator role, regardless if it's the best defensive coordinator role that's out there, which, unbiased take, right? Now, a 49er fan, it's still a step back. And I think he has a lot to prove as a head coach. And if you're looking at it from the Jags perspective, they already had an offensive head coach, and that was a disaster. with Doug Peterson. So maybe this time you go defense and you go with a guy like Robert Saleh, and it depends on who he brings as the offensive coordinator and all those things, and he has to fill out his staff. Offensively, the Jags have their pieces. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. is a stud. Obviously, you have Trevor Lawrence, you have Etienne, you have Bigsby, you have Evan Ingram, you have Christian Kirk. You've got guys, and you still can add in the draft as well too. It's not like they had a good season, So again, the Jags aren't like this. The Jags aren't the Browns. The Jags aren't the Raiders. Like it's not that like where it's just like I don't want to go there. Like it's not that bad, right? Like they definitely have, and if you go there and you're able to turn them around, that's impressive. And I think again, the idea of it is like you said, almost like the team has a bunch of red flags, but you go on a date with the team and you're like, you know what? I could fix this. I could fix this person.
This job ain't too big for me.
I could fix this person. I like, the good is outweighing the bad. Yeah, there's two little red flags, but we could work around that. Nobody's perfect, right? Like that type of thing. So, it's just gonna boil down to what sort of head coaching offers he gets. Same thing with Ulbrich, which I don't think he will. And then if that's the case, then the prediction that we'll make, and this is going to be a show about our 2024 predictions, so don't listen too closely because my goodness, I was going through them and man, swing and a miss. But Robert Saleh leaves, and then it could be Ulbrich. I think that like if I was to predict, I think they definitely would like to put a full court press on Saleh, especially because we are getting closer and closer into the draft process, and you want to start to already put your staff together. So the other defensive coordinators that were interviewed, Deshae Townsend, Lou Anarumo, who actually he's pretty good. No to Gus Bradley.
Anarumo hasn't. So only Saleh and Townsend have.
Oh no, he hasn't interviewed. Like he's a possibility. Right. No to Gus Bradley. Absolutely not. Even though hey, he made Samuel Womack a good player. And Patrick Graham, former Raiders defensive coordinator. So on my list here, what I'm looking at: Saleh, Ulbrich, Anarumo, and Dennis Allen. Those are your four. Everybody else, peace out. Yeah. Like I'm good on. And if you land any one of those four, you feel good about that.
And I saw Anarumo is getting some interest for other positions as well. Albert Breer said earlier, Falcons and Colts interested to have him in for defensive coordinator interviews. So, I mean, I haven't seen the 49ers be listed as a team for him, although Albert Breer does say he does have interest from other teams as well, but didn't mention. Hopefully the 49ers are one of those teams, because I think that would be awesome too. Because I feel like Kyle, with his defense, that's been one of those he's somewhat struggled with. And look, like Anarumo didn't have a lot to work with with the Bengals, at least particularly this past season. You pretty much just had Trey Hendrickson, who's a dog, but like that's all you had.
That's it.
So I think he could do a lot better with the 49ers defense, even with how they stand right now. And you got to imagine free agency, draft, they'll replenish the defense a little bit more. So I would consider him as well. But yeah, like I think there's a really great list of options here for the 49ers that's going to be able to satisfy what they're looking for, which is a defensive coordinator who has existing defensive coordinator experience. There's plenty of that available. And another thing that Nick Wagner mentioned is that, Shanahan does want to have someone with the familiarity of the 4-3 scheme. So yeah, not really wanting to change that up still, even though he said like he's open to changing things, right? And changing things with the scheme. But all in all, like we're keeping it 4-3. All right.
Yeah.
So,
but I think that when he said that, and again, I'm basing this off vibes, which is what this show runs on. I think what he means is that I'm open to changing the scheme for a bright defensive, like the brightest defensive mind, right? Like if Jim Schwartz comes over, you're not gonna bully Jim Schwartz into the wide 9 and 4-3, and like he's gonna put those guys in position. If you get Spagnuolo, you're not gonna tell Spagnuolo, nah, man, cover 3, right? Like I think if he were to land one of the top defensive minds, then you're open to change because that's who they are. When it's all these other people, and we're talking about like, with Saleh and Ulbrich, I'm sure there'll be wrinkles, but it's overall going to be the same scheme. If it's Gus Bradley, it's literally going to be cover 3, everything like that. That's literally all they ran in Indianapolis, right? But I think what he meant by that was if it's one of the GOATs, if it's one of the top guys, like if it's a Brian Flores or Schwartz or Spags, then yeah, do whatever you want, man. You got it. I can totally just walk away from the defense now. Like I don't even have to get involved anymore. So I think he meant kind of like that. Like if it's one of the better guys, for sure, then you trust them. But if it's somebody who's a newer defensive coordinator or somebody who's a first-time defensive coordinator or somebody who specializes in that, then it's gonna have to be, the same thing with whatever sauce they want to throw on it, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think Rob has the clip of Kyle talking about that specifically. If you want to play it, Rob.
Play it, Rob.
Team that we've had here. I mean, I think it's one of the hardest things to go to when you got the right guys in the right spots. But I do think people adjust to schemes, and I think you have to adjust too, depending on your personnel. And I think that was a tougher thing for us this year. Just going into the season, it was a little bit harder than past seasons. And some of the injuries we had, I think, made it really tough for Nick. And I thought he got better trying to adjust and do different things. But I do think that's something that definitely, I'm not saying you got to change schemes, but you have to have the ability, the history, and the knowledge of how to change some stuff up when you're in some certain situations. And I think that we do need that more going forward.
I mean, him talking about changing the scheme is more so about, I just want someone who knows what they're doing enough to be able to adjust when needed.
That statement right there only reinforces the thought that we had, that Nick Sorensen was safe for a little while. And it felt like right after Greenlaw and Hufanga came back. And then the last 3 weeks, the bottom fell out of the defense scheme-wise. And then they were like, okay, yeah, we can't do it. They were that close to running it back with Sorensen. They were that close. That's exactly what he said right there. Is I feel like it was messed up because he didn't have all his people. You get your people back. You only allow 12 points to the Rams. Okay, maybe it's not all Sorensen, and he does need help. And then, boom, the bottom falls out the last 3 weeks. And you know what? They said, we can't do it. It's crazy that he kind of just reinforced that thought process, because I think we both of us said, I think they might be running it back with him, especially when the defense picked up when Greenlaw and Hufanga came back. Oh, man, that would have been mutiny in 49ers land. Speaking of mutiny in 49ers land, Steph, did you enjoy your playoff football weekend?
To be honest with you, I didn't get to check out all of the games. I only checked out 2 because I had family in town, but I checked out the Bucks and the Commanders game.
Great game.
That was probably the best game of the weekend. I also caught the replay of Packers-Eagles. The Eagles look phenomenal, I gotta say. I still think the Eagles are going to beat the Rams, although the Rams looked pretty great last night as well.
So this weekend, I made sure I planned a lot of things. And
you weren't trying to watch?
Nah, for what?
Yeah.
All right. I watched the Bills game because there's a Bills bar in my town. And that was really fun to watch with them, because every time they score, they play that song. Get up and shout now, shout. It's cool. You hang out, and you watch other fan bases. I had a stress-free weekend because I didn't watch football this weekend, and I didn't start arguments about quarterbacks in the playoffs and Brock Purdy. What are we doing?
I kept seeing that unfold. I was like, I'm staying out of this because this is ugly.
If I am not on the internet and I don't see it, then I don't even get tempted to be in the conversation. But the question that I have is this. It's because my team's not in the playoffs. I'm not going to dunk on some other team that made the playoffs.
And lost in the playoffs because we didn't even make it. We can't even get in the club.
So what's the argument? So what are we like? Haha, Justin Herbert lost, so Brock Purdy's better. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? So I guess this is the rational way to think about this. The people that should be watching this and saying that it's in Brock Purdy's favor is Brock Purdy's camp. The guys that are about to get into the contract negotiations, because they're going to be able to point to this weekend and say, Jordan Love makes this amount of money and he has one playoff win and Brock Purdy's beaten him. This quarterback, XYZ, has made this amount of money and he got bounced in Wild Card Weekend. And my quarterback has a 4-2 playoff record. So this idea of fans dunking on other quarterbacks, it feels like a meaningless and pointless exercise. But what happened this weekend is good for Brock Purdy because of his contract negotiations, and he's going to be able to point to the failures of some of these quarterbacks that are in the tier of money that he's trying to get into as a bargaining chip. Would you disagree with that?
I definitely wouldn't. Quarterback discourse is one of the worst things in all of Twitter, X, whatever. But yeah, I mean, you make make a point. Like, his camp is looking at these games, and they're going to be making the same arguments that people on X have been making for Brock. Right?
Are we officially calling it X? Because I think I'm just gonna keep fighting it.
Okay, Twitter. All right, that's cool. Let's just make that a rule on this podcast. We'll continue to call it Twitter.
Yeah. It's Twitter. I don't care what you try to rebrand it as. It's it, man. It's like, like if you change the name of the Whopper to something else, I'm still gonna call it the Whopper. Like, what the hell?
That's fair. Those are like mainstays. So
right.
Twitter it is. So like those same arguments his agent is going to make as well. You look at quarterbacks who are getting paid, have recently gotten paid a lot of money, and you see what Brock was able, because it's all going to go back to what Brock did last season, right? At the end of the day, you can't look too much at what he did this year, because this year he's on the couch for the playoffs. But
the Mandela effect's real. This year didn't even happen.
It didn't happen.
It didn't happen. If I don't remember it, it didn't happen, right? If I pushed it out of my mind, it didn't happen, right?
But see, like, that's the thing that's so frustrating about these quarterback arguments is, like, Herbert very well one day could, get over this hump that he's been in his career with the Chargers. And who knows, maybe, like, all it would take is a change of scenery, right? Like, sometimes that happens. Like, a really great quarterback, he just goes somewhere else and poof, like, dude is onto something and, in the Super Bowl or something like that. And to just continue to argue about who's better and who's not based on what a team does in the postseason, I think is a little silly. I think even with, the 49ers and what Brock did in the playoffs, like, what they achieved wasn't just because of Brock. Like, come on, like, and Justin Herbert getting bounced in the playoffs isn't just because of Herbert, although, like, it wasn't his best game. I didn't watch that game, right? I was just going off of, what people were saying. But I can't imagine that it's so bad to say, like, Brock's better than Herbert. And the reason that quarterback discourse is so bad is because it's so subjective, and it's like, at the end of the day, it's whatever you prefer in a quarterback. And some people simply prefer arm talent in a quarterback. Like, that's it. You may be missing like 4 or 5 other like key qualities that a quarterback needs in order to be very successful. But at the end of the day, like, some people are going to look at arm talent and think like that's what makes you better in this league, arm accuracy and things like that. So at the end of the day, Brock's not the most arm talented quarterback. And so for a lot of people, they're going to continue to put other quarterbacks ahead of him in that discussion. But that's the thing, like, not everyone looks at quarterbacking that way and what makes you a good quarterback in that way. So people are going to have endless conversations about that, and they will literally never agree, which is why I don't get into these discussions to begin with, because it's so freaking stupid and pointless, and it's mind-numbing.
People are going to have endless arguments, but nobody wants to have the argument that I want to have. Jim Harbaugh got bounced in the first round. Has Kyle Shanahan ever been bounced in the first round? I thought your savior. I thought, oh my God, because 49er fans make Harbaugh sound like he walks on water. That's the part that's funny to me. But when they lose and they don't get out of the first round in a game that they easily should have won, they should have beat the hell out of the Texans. Nothing about Harbaugh? Not too much on Jim? Okay. Just asking a question. So, because Jim Harbaugh would have got this 49ers team to the playoffs. Like, did I sleep through a 49ers Super Bowl victory? Like, when did this happen? I just don't get that part. Oh, we got a super chat from the Unfaithful Perspective. I love that name, actually, by the way. I don't know what it is, but I had the sneaking suspicion that if Herbert were on the Niners the last 5 years, he'd have won a playoff game or two. I would agree. And I think the argument is this, okay? When we talk about quarterbacks, right, people throw around the word elite too much, and there's only 4 elite quarterbacks in the league.
Tops.
4.
Yep.
4. Burrow, Lamar, Allen, and Mahomes. And you don't rank them 1 through 4. You rank them in tiers. Until someone knocks off Mahomes, he's in tier 1. Lamar and Allen are fighting for 2 and 3. And then Joe Burrow's right there. So he's the fourth. But those are your 4 elite quarterbacks. Everybody else, year to year, week to week, we can move them up and down. But I do want to say this. Let's just say this is a blank slate, and the other 20, so I said 4, the other 28 quarterbacks are available. And GMs get a chance to pick one by one. So the first team that gets to pick gets to choose between Justin Herbert and almost everybody else. What are the odds that GM says, I'm going to run with Herbert and I'm going to take him and start my organization around him before they do Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, everybody, right? So I think that's the way that you should contextualize it. And to be fair, I make a lot of jokes about Harbaugh. It's just because everybody is so romanticized Harbaugh to the point where it's just like I said, you would swear that they won a Super Bowl while he was here. But Ladd McConkey's your only real receiver. Again, what did you expect when you start another Greg Roman offense? Like, when are we going to start to get away from the idea that Greg Roman is like you can run a competent offense, but the same thing's going to happen over and over again. That's why I never understood that pairing. Because with Greg Roman, it always had to be a quarterback who can run, read option, RPO, would like to talk. Like, Herbert can throw the ball down the field, but you don't give him anybody but Ladd. Quentin Johnson's a bust. You look around at that team and they didn't really have much. But on top of that, Herbert didn't play well. So he's got to take it on the chin at the same time. So it's weird. Like, when we're just talking about the way the Chargers are built, it never felt right to me because I don't like the Greg Roman thing. What you're going to turn Justin Herbert into an RPO machine, or you're going to run the football way more when you should be able to throw the football with him? It just was an odd pairing. But again, back to the point is, like, if you take the other 28 and you're the first GM that gets a chance to pick out of all of them, how many of them would just say that they're going to take Justin Herbert first and say we're going to start over Hurts, over Love, over anybody right now at this point, or maybe Jaden Daniels, right? Maybe Jaden Daniels right now is the one guy that I would say that people would be running up to go grab because he does look very good. Although it's 1 year, he looks very good, and he's probably, the flavor of the week, or the month, the year,
recency
right?
bias is real.
It always is, because like you said, the discussion around Brock is centered about this year, right? It's like, we don't remember, we forget the other years. Who cares? This year he didn't look good, so you can't pay him. So it goes both ways when it comes to this. So I just think that it's an interesting discussion. For me, when you're outside the club, when a team loses and you dunk on the quarterback and you're like, ha ha ha, Brock's never lost in this run, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you know who does things like that? The Cowboys fans, Cowboys players, right? They're just like, oh, look, you got bounced
right now.
Yeah, you weren't invited. Like, Micah Parsons is telling every podcast Mike he can, we're gonna win the chip next year. Somebody test this man for CTE. My goodness, like, what are you talking about, dude? So yeah, again, wildcard weekend was interesting. Not because, well, the games were good. I'll go back and watch some of them, but it was just interesting because it sparked like this civil war on 49ers Twitter, and I don't understand why it had to be all that.
Well, the consensus says that most of the games were not good, and I, having looked at the score, just like kind of scoreboard.
The Bills game wasn't that good. Yeah, that game.
Yeah, like they were kind of over, by halftime, a lot of them. So hopefully next week we'll have some better matchups, and I expect they will. We're gonna get Lamar versus Allen. Like, that's gonna be fire. We're gonna get
Sunday night football
Stafford.
too.
Yes. I'm looking forward to next week for sure. And it's supposed to be like cold as hell out here in Colorado and a few other states as well. We're going to cold snap. So I'm staying in and I'm watching all the games. I'm ready to have some fun with that. But Jay, you ready to look back at some of our predictions from
before we do that, and we jump on the L train with a lot of our predictions real quick, I did forget one quarterback who played, and this was yesterday, and I watched that game.
Stafford.
Sam Darnold.
Oh.
You forgot he played?
Is he
He played that poor. He played that poorly?
Is he a quarterback?
So week 17 and the wild card week. Recency bias is real, but Sam Darnold is showing you that I'm still kind of the same player if my offensive line can't block for me. Because last night he had the yips. He was looking down at receivers that were open, didn't throw the football, held the ball too long, tied for the most sacks in a playoff game. Sam Darnold kind of proved to you that no matter what, I gave you 14 wins. We had 14 wins, but I'm still that guy if you can't protect for me. And I'm going to revert back to these bad tendencies when guys are in my face. And it goes back to what everybody's hesitation with Sam was the entire time about his ability to read defenses and stay poised. And you just, the last 2 weeks, it popped right back up. And I wonder, Steph, is this, did Sam Darnold cost himself some money these last 2 weeks, man? Right. See, like,
yeah.
So the thing is this, I don't think the loss cost him money. I think the fashion in the way that they lost cost him money, because they could have lost and Sam Darnold could have played his ass off and had an incredible game. So I think there's two different ways to look at it. And also, I sent out a tweet because Minnesota, it felt like Minnesota was right before that week 18 game. They were kind of pushing themselves into a corner about like, okay, what do we do? We have Sam, we have JJ, right? And I sent out a tweet, which I don't know how this got misconstrued, but I said it in plain English, and here I'll reiterate it here. I would have said, or I say, if Sam Darnold got to the cusp of making the Super Bowl, the NFC Championship game, then the Minnesota Vikings would have had to have a real internal discussion about bringing him back. If they went and they won it, then it's as easy as this. Thank you for your service. Bye-bye. Let someone pay you, and we'll take J.J. McCarthy with the rookie contract. And people just didn't understand that. And what I mean by that is, why are you going to pay a guy 45, 50 million when you already got your chip? They're not going to turn into a dynasty, and you've got the young rookie that you really like. But if you got close and you felt that this group had a better chance to get back and possibly win it, then you might have to have that discussion. I don't see what was so hard about what I said. If you win a bowl with Sam, you say thank you for your service. We're probably going to put your jersey up in the rafters one day. Go sign somewhere else because we got what we needed out of you. And then you go right there. So I don't know, man. It's just funny to me because, again, he could have lost the game. But if he would have lost it and, like, going out blazing,
yeah,
it would have been completely different. But he fell flat on his face and turned right back into Sam Darnold. Huh? Like, did you see the picture of like a pumpkin on his face or whatever? I was just like, my God, man. So yeah,
he did have some kind of funny faces that he was making. But I mean, the 49ers were in a similar conundrum with like Jimmy. Remember, like when he the year that he went to the Super Bowl, or the 49ers went to the Super Bowl with him, that we were having that discussion, like, how can you move on from a quarterback if you go to the Super Bowl with him? Well, he lost, and then, following season, 49ers make a big move at quarterback. But yeah, I mean, and that's what it all comes down to. Just because, like, you have a quarterback that's good doesn't mean you shouldn't continue looking for something great at the same time.
Speaking of looking for something great, I don't know if that's a good transition, but Steph, do you want to go through some of our 2024 predictions? Look, we're going to have to really take some victory laps on the ones that we got right, because when you were sending them and I was looking through, there's not really many there that we so. Hey, look, this is your Gold Standard Podcast edition of Freezing Cold Takes about the 49ers. And Steph and I got to sit in the box, and we've got to own up to our discussion, and I think we can go through our rationale and our thought process at the time. Process over results is what I say, but it is a results-driven business, podcasting, man, and the results weren't great. Do we have them up on the screen, or do you want to just start to read some off, and then we can go back and forth?
I'll read some off. I'm not sure if Rob has anything on the screen, but yeah, as far as Brock Purdy goes, I was expecting that he'd have a good season, but would not have as good a season statistically as he did in 2023. I did expect his efficiency numbers to remain around the same. I don't think it was as high as it was in 2023, but I want to say like his EPA, or at least adjusted EPA, was still like, one of the higher ones in the league. I did expect a regression in interceptions, which we definitely did see this season. And I expected that we would see some growth and some maturity from Brock as the leader of the offense. And so I don't think that's too bad. Like,
no.
I think
what was wrong with that?
Yeah, no, I think that one was okay. I think it, honestly, I think the season for Brock went a little slightly worse than I expected. but I think a lot of that did have to do with the uncontrollables around him. Like there was a lot that didn't really go the 49ers way. That's not to make an excuse for Brock at all, or even like the offense, but yeah, I do feel like that impacted it a little bit. Now, what about yours for Brock, Jay? Do you have yours?
Yeah, I do. And I just wanted to comment like on what we were talking about regression statistically, because it was one of the most efficient seasons ever. Like just mathematically, there had to be a step back, because how are you going to do this again? Right. Like, so I think that wasn't something that was crazy or insane or anything like that. But for me, again, I said regression in numbers, but not in play. Expecting to see improvements in the little things, handling free rushers, adjusting protections. Improvements won't be told by numbers. And offense evolution. Regression in numbers was fine. Expecting to see improvements in the little things. At times you saw that. You did see it, at times. Offensive evolution, but it wasn't because of Brock. I can say that at least. But improvements won't be told by numbers. Do I think that Brock Purdy improved this season over last? I can't say that.
Yeah.
That I can't say. He didn't regress to the point that I'm just like, oh my God, like what happened? The cliff, but he didn't improve. He didn't have a better season this season than last season. No. Now, obviously, Christian McCaffrey, all those things, we know, you have to contextualize that, but just him, just evaluating him. He didn't have a better season, and we didn't think it was possible statistically because of how good he was. Doesn't mean that we're out on Brock. Doesn't mean that we're shitting on Brock. Don't start. All right. I can hear it already. Don't start. But it is what it is. Like, just in a vacuum and evaluating him this season, it is what it is. Yeah, there you go. I think he's talking about somebody in the comments, but all right, go for your next one.
Okay, so the next one was like the offense and like evolution of the offense. So I did expect some evolution with the addition of speed, and I kind of pointed towards Isaac Guerendo and Jacob Cowing being the reasons for those. Of course, I did expect a little, I think, more involvement from those players earlier in the season, which we didn't really get till they were absolutely needed, at least for Guerendo. I liked what we saw from Guerendo, but I definitely wanted to see more of Cowing. And I do still think we'll continue to see more speed added to the offense as Cowing gets more involvement, hopefully going forward. But yeah, maybe as far as everything else, like it was hard to see, I think, an evolution in the offense when you were missing Brandon Ayuk, when you were missing Christian McCaffrey, pretty much almost all season, and Trent. Like, so I think the offense was definitely held back by a couple of things this year.
Yeah, and mine was that is contingent on how Brock plays and the growth of the defense with Sorensen, but neither of those things happen really. It's tough, with these, because you trade up for Guerendo and you're just like, yeah, you got to use him, right? Like, we're going to find a way to use him. And then, Christian McCaffrey's out for so long and they refuse to use him on the field, right? Like, and then Cowing, you would think Ricky Pearsall is, goes through the unfortunate situation. Then Brandon Ayuk goes down. Deebo Samuel's struggling. Like, let's find a way to get the guy on the field. Nope, you're going to get Chris Conley and Ronnie Bell, and you're going to like it. Like that, and it's just whatever it is, whether it's, up to speed with the offense, all those things, I think it can happen next season. But we kind of expected this season to be that, because it did feel like on defense, they did change into more of a coverage center defense, right? Like, their secondary was great. And you thought that maybe this is going to be the year that they kind of switched to a lot of speed and causing mismatches that way. And it just didn't happen that way. It just didn't, because of, Kyle Shanahan has his trust issues. He's been hurt. I don't know when he was hurt. I'd love to sit him down and maybe kind of pick his brain and just say, who hurt you and when did it happen? And we have to heal you. Like, let's heal you from the football player that you put trust in and broke your trust.
Was it Dante Pettis, do you think?
It wasn't Dante Pettis. It probably is. You know what? The Catman is somewhere in, with the Saints and everything as well, too. If it was Dante Pettis, then you know what, man? We got to have a talk, bro. Because how could you do this to our coach? Like, and you're a walking red flag, Dante Pettis. Why would any other organization want you when you're out here just breaking hearts? Anyway, you were skeptical of the run defense. No worries in the secondary.
Yeah.
Good and good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Not bad.
Right.
And I also said, quote, think it's going to be one of the best secondaries in the league, which, I think they could have been, but as far as like what the numbers will show, it wouldn't show that,
Right.
because I think with the lack of turnovers hurt everyone's perception of this defense. And I mean, after all, like that's a big impact for any secondary. Like if you're getting turnovers, you will be regarded as one of the best in the league if you're like top in turnovers, right? This defense just wasn't that. I also said, like, I think Lenore was going to take a leap this season, which, I
Bang.
think he built on last season. I thought he was going to put together an all-pro season. Not quite that, but like, I think had the entire team been a little bit better this year, like we could have seen that. The biggest miss by far for me was saying Jair Brown was going to have a tremendous year. And by saying tremendous, sound so much like, John Lynch, because that's one of his like favorite 5
tremendous
words. But
convicted. What are the other ones? Steadfast. Like those are like the type of John Lynch words. Yeah. Steadfast is a good one. I like that.
Just add those. Just add those in a word salad, and you're good.
Hey, and the thing is, that makes you sound wise when you use words like that. You're just like, what, man? He might be onto something like with that. When you use words like that, it just makes you wise beyond your years. And then you said pass rush will figure out a way to be productive, right? Okay. I said the 49ers were going to have some more coverage sacks this season. It felt like that's pretty much what it was most of the time.
Only sacks they got.
Yeah, like Nick Bosa had some good ones and everything, but it felt like that's all they had this season. And I also said there's the least amount of depth on the defensive line, but that's not a prediction. That's not a prediction. True. That was the truth in preseason. That was going to be the truth on January 14th. Like it was what it was, especially when you lose Eric Armstead and then Javon Hargrave goes down. And it's just like, yeah, like this was the truth, right? Like, and then no Drake Jackson. So it absolutely, that's not a prediction at all. And I definitely said the pass rush wasn't going to be the driving force of this defense. It definitely wasn't, like, at all. Like, it wasn't at all. And there's almost no shot that they're going to be as bad as they were last year on run defense.
Womp. Big womp. In hindsight, what's crazy is that in hindsight, the 2023 defense wasn't even that bad. Like that's
it wasn't
the part about it all.
It wasn't. And and then MVP of offense and defense. We didn't want to say somebody easy, right? Like Brock or CMC.
So I ended up saying we actually both ended up saying
said
Debo.
It. So you said no. We'll
that's
do it.
Probably the fattest L.
No, but hold on. 1, 2, 3.
What?
Debo Samuel. We were trying to say it at the same time.
Okay.
We literally said
I missed it just as much.
We literally said with our whole chest.
Yes.
That Debo Samuel was gonna bounce back.
Do you know why though? Because like
yes, he was in the best shape of his life. We fell for the best shape of his life. Yes.
Bamboozled.
The next time somebody says best shape of your life, I'm gonna kick somebody. Like I don't want to hear that.
We say this every year. Though,
every year we fall for it. We fall for it. Woo! Oh baby, if you want to talk about an L, good God. Woo. Rob, cut this up and make fun of us. Like when you do the funny things or whatever. My God. Steph and I looked right in the camera. Realized it's got to be Debo Samuel, right? Best shape of his life. Gonna have a great training camp. By all accounts, he looks good. He's angry. This is a contract year. No, and no. Down the drain. Woo. That was a stinker. And then defensive MVP. I believe I said Nick Bosa. It's probably Fred Warner. It's probably Fred Warner.
You said Bosa. I said Bosa, but I didn't want to take the low-hanging fruit. So I said, if not Bosa, I said Jair Brown. I don't know where my confidence in Jair Brown came from because I was like so bullish on Jair Brown. Like, and he made us look crazy too.
It was rational, Steph. He had such a good rookie season.
I'm mad.
You figured with another year in the system and he's going to start a full off season. It was rational. Like it wasn't something and for me, we thought that we were taking the easy way out saying that, who's going to be the breakout player on defense because we already felt Lenore broke out. Like that was already done, right? Like he already broke out. That's why we stayed away from that. Who else would it have been? Right? Like the defensive line was all veterans. So you can't break out if you're a veteran. Like who was it going to be? And we thought it was going to be Jair Brown for those obvious reasons. And we felt like we were taking the easy way out. Little did we know, whew, man, he's fighting to stay on his depth chart, like, going into this offseason. So we're going to find out. Hey, look, Steph, the only way to get better, the only way to continue to refine your technique and refine your thought process is to look back on the things that you did wrong. Everyone can look at everything that they said right and like, ha, 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 right? I mean, do it all the time. But it's the same way when you evaluate a football player. When things are going well, I don't learn anything about you. When everything's going well, I don't learn anything about you. When you're going through adversity is when I'm going to learn about you. What type of person are you? How do you respond? Are you going to take your ball and go home? Are you somebody who's going to continue to fix it? That's the difference, right? So I think with us, I think it's great to highlight these things because, one, it allows us to look back at our thought process, take notes on that and say, hey, this is where we messed up. This is where my work was wrong. But it also allows us to refine our process, right? So again, if you were looking for ways to dunk on Steph and I, man, just go through our predictions, man. You got, and also it probably was wrong to say 49 is going to go 17-0 and win the bowl as well too, right? Like, I mean, I understand that part. Like, I think we were feeling ourselves a little bit too much. Like, hey, we're just going to run it back, man.
Why wouldn't you, right?
Right,
like,
of course not.
We had every reason, I think, to be bullish on this team, right? And it just didn't work out. Clearly, the team was also like bullish on itself a little too much. Maybe they were feeling themselves a little much, but we definitely got humbled. Us along with the 49ers got humbled in our predictions, but we're going to be better. We're going to take this time to really evaluate our process, like you
watch
said.
The tape.
And we're going to watch the tape and we're going to have better predictions for you, to start 2025.
And I think again, we're gonna fix some things. We're gonna get in there. We're committed and convicted to being better, and we have the podcasting group to get it done. Like all of us, I believe in the guys in that locker room and girls in that locker room. I believe in both of them, and I think that's kind of where we are. And again, you want to chalk this season up to that, fine, that's cool. But we're gonna get right back in there. We expect to be the top podcasting group going into next season as well too, because that's just how we're built. And the belief that I have in the team that we have here is too much, right?
It's just tremendous. It's tremendous.
It's tremendous, and I'm steadfast in my conviction. Is that good, Rob? Like honestly, I could be a GM. I could be somebody who just walks right up to the podium and says a bunch of coach speak nonsense.
Convicted.
You know what, Jay? I actually have to end our show. I have a question for you and everyone else here, because Kay Adams put out this tweet yesterday, and I thought it was a fun discussion. Which NFL GM would win the Royal Rumble? And a lot of people were saying John Lynch, right? Like John Lynch has to be like up there, one of the finalists for sure. Do you have someone you want to name?
Well, he probably is the leader in the clubhouse because of, the fact that he's a Hall of Fame safety.
Yeah.
I've got to start thinking about other GMs and how big they are.
Someone said Dan Morgan, so former linebacker. All right.
Dan Morgan, that's a good one.
Yeah. I don't know how.
I mean, if he's a former linebacker, he should be fine. Yeah. That's a Ryan Poles is huge. Great call, Eddie. Ryan Poles is huge. But I think when you're thinking about the Royal Rumble, and this is not going to turn into a wrestling podcast, you got to think about who's the most underhanded. Who's the one that'll do anything to win the Royal Rumble? Like distract the referee to knock somebody over? And you know who I'm going with? Trent Baalke, baby, because that man knows where the bodies are. I don't understand how you. Coaches come, they leave. He stays. He knows somebody. He's got dirt on somebody. He knows where the bodies are buried.
He sounds like he's been smoking since the age of 5. Like this dude is built for it.
Trent Baalke is the one that'll have someone distract the referee, and when they turn around, he's gonna like flip somebody over or he's gonna hit somebody with a chair. Trent Baalke would do. Yeah, he would. And Trent Baalke would likely be the last GM out after so many other GMs have been knocked over. So give me in wrestling, it's not the biggest, it's not the best, it's the most underhanded. And I don't even watch wrestling like that, like that type of thing. So that's what I think. I think that's the intangible you're missing when you're talking about which GM. I think we're just thinking in terms of size and strength. But what happens when, The Rock gets turned around and he gets hit with a chair and they just throw his ass over? Well, The Rock should have won, you know what I mean? But, somebody, did something Somebody did something a little bit more underhanded.
Who's got the
I love it.
tenacity? Yep.
I love it.
That was a good
What-
one, actually.
yeah.
That was a great question.
John Lynch, he knocked his brother-in-law out of a game. Yeah, well, that's good too. I mean, again, if we're talking about attributes, if we're talking about that dog in him, yes, you can probably put all those guys.
Yep.
But if you've watched WWE, there's always some nonsense that happens, and the referee gets distracted, and like all of a sudden it's just like, and you're sitting there like, I remember as a kid, like I'm yelling at the TV, turn around. They can't hear me, like that's the type of stuff. You got to think about the guy. You got to think about the guy who is going to be the most underhanded, and that's why I'll choose Trent Baalke. That's how I'm going.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. He's resilient.
Yeah, that's it.
If nothing else.
Hey guys, watch out. All right. Anyway, this has been another electric episode of Bully Ball. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get your audio podcasts. Make sure that you like and subscribe to this video on YouTube. Steph and I have YouTube channels as well. Like and subscribe to those as well too. And follow Steph on Twitter at Steph49K. Follow me on Twitter at JasonAponte2103. Steph, this was a fun episode. It was kind of cool to recount the L's. There were many L's. More L's I think than the 49ers had, so. But either way, for Steph, for Jay, we're out here.
Peace.